Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at one of the most pivotal, most famous lines in all of religious history, a moment that really shaped theology for millennia. And we're going to flip it on its head.
We are. We're diving into that profound question Moses asks at the burning bush. Who shall I say sent me?
And it feels like such a simple question on the surface. But the source material for our deep dive today, Dr. Roy E. Richmond's metaphysical analysis, it argues that, that the centuries-old religious interpretation just completely missed the point.
Completely. And by missing that point, we've fundamentally misunderstood the entire nature of authority, of identity itself. It's a huge claim, but he backs it up.
Right, because the traditional story, it's a frightened man, he's negotiating with this distant, external God, and he's basically asking for credentials, a divine password to get him through the door.
Exactly. But Dr. Roy's work just dismantles that idea of a distant deity commissioning a reluctant human. Instead, he makes this incredibly powerful case that the true nature of being sent is an internal awakening.
An internal awakening.
Yeah, a recognition of the divine mind that's already operating through us, not some external assignment that's delivered to us.
So our mission today is really to unpack that shift. It's a journey from, seeking a theological label.
A stamp of approval, yeah.
A stamp of approval from an outside source, to realizing that the very fact of our existence, the breath that moves us, is the authority. We have to kind of look past that religious veneer to see the metaphysical reality underneath.
And the distinction, it really hinges on how you're listening. Dr. Roy lays out two ways of hearing Moses' question. First, there's what he calls the traditional or the natural ear.
Okay, so with the natural ear, what am I hearing?
You're hearing a man who is completely focused on external fear and hierarchy. He needs a political name, a theological title, a label that will grant him safe passage, or authority with the elders and with Pharaoh.
He's asking, what's your title so I can use it? It's a practical question. It's a survival question, really.
Totally. It's rooted in those daunting external challenges. But then there's the second way of listening, with the awakened ear.
The metaphysical perspective.
Right. And when you listen that way, the question it completely transforms. It's no longer about a title.
So what does it become? It
becomes, what is the source of this commission that's stirring inside of me? What is the essence that is moving me to do this? What name do I use when I speak from this awakened authority? He's seeking confirmation of his internal identity, not a mandate from an external boss.
And that, according to Dr. Roy, is the core failure of the traditional interpretation. The fixation on finding a literal name like Jehovah or Yahweh made the religious world miss the entire point.
The central awareness that Moses was asking about his source of being. And the answer he got from, the source calls it Elohim Ruwac Breath. We'll just say the breath to keep it simple.
Remembering that Ruach means wind, spirit, or breath.
Exactly. The answer he got wasn't a name. It was the revelation of eternal existence itself.
That's a huge distinction. So the core thesis for this whole deep dive is that the authority that sends us isn't something outside of us. It's the eternal, ever-present reality that we exist.
And to really get the mechanics of that, we have to follow Dr. Roy right back to the original text.
To the language.
To the language. We have to start there, at the linguistic foundation. Because the entire misunderstanding, he asserts, rests on the translation of one single critical Hebrew word, the word for sent.
Okay, let's unpack it. So we're looking at the specific Hebrew word used across the Old Testament for every phrase that gets translated as sent me. And that word is shalach.
Shalach. It's cataloged as OT 7971. And when you trace its root definition, it means so much more than just dispatching something.
More than just putting a stamp on it and mailing it.
It's way more. It means to send forth, yes, but also to release, to let flow, to send away or out. And this is a crucial one, to extend something forward.
Okay, wait. To release, to let flow. How does that change the picture of Moses at the bush? Because if I say, my boss sent me to the conference, and that's all about external authority and distance, how does shalach challenge that?
Well, that's the critical distinction Dr. Roy is making. The common English word sent just automatically implies that external dispatching. It implies a distant God, a hierarchy, subordination. Shalach doesn't imply that at all.
So what does it describe?
It describes a movement from within to without. That's the key. Think of it less like a boss handing out an assignment and more like a spring welling up and flowing out.
Oh, okay. So the source of the movement is internal. It's from within the divine mind, and it just flows outward into expression. So the sending is actually an inner unfolding, not not an external job order.
Precisely. It shifts the entire location of authority from out there to in here.
Right.
So if we accept Shalak as the mechanism, then the breath, the Elohim Ruwac breath, it doesn't send by distance or location. It doesn't point a finger across the universe and say, I am here and you need to go over there.
Because that would create a separation, a duality that the metaphysical view rejects.
Exactly. So what does the breath actually do then? The source material is very specific on this. The breath releases, it unveils, it brings forth, and it lets flow what is already within the sacred self.
It's an emergence of what's already there.
That's it. It's like a seed growing. It expresses the oak that was always coded inside of it. It isn't getting external instructions on how to be an oak. The authority is the life force itself, the ruach.
That seed and oak analogy, that really helps. So let's apply that directly back to Moses. The traditional story is a separate, distant Elohim up there is commissioning me, a separate human, to go over there. It's a spatial transaction.
But the metaphysical reality, the one that's actually grounded in the meaning of Shalak, is completely different. It's the breath within me is releasing what I already am.
Moses isn't traveling to the commission. The commission is flowing out of his own awakened being.
Yes. His only task is to allow that inner truth, the eternal I exist, to be expressed, to get out of the way, really. Yeah.
Okay, that clarifies the mechanics of Shalak. So now we have to look at Moses himself, his internal state leading up to this, because he was obviously struggling with his identity. Dr. Roy calls him a man caught between worlds.
And he absolutely was. He was defined entirely by these external systems, trapped between the rigid world of Egyptian imagery with its hierarchical gods and external titles, and all this idolatrous fear, and on the other hand, this intense inner stirring of his true identity.
He's trying to make sense of his past, his actions like killing the Egyptian, his current life as a shepherd.
Yeah.
All with this powerful internal pressure building up.
And the source suggests that when he fled Egypt, it wasn't just, a physical escape. It was an existential flight. He fled because he hadn't found his anchor yet. He hadn't discovered his inner I exist that could stabilize him against all that external judgment and fear.
He was running from the limits of his own effort. He tried to fix things with his own strength and opinion. And it blew up in his face.
It failed, yeah. He needed a revelation that went beyond opinion and strength. He needed the revelation of being itself. And that's exactly what he got at the burning presence.
And Dr. Roy he's really insistent on this point. The burning presence was not some physical bush that was on fire. It was a blazing revelation in Moses' consciousness, an internal illumination so intense that he experienced it as fire.
The fire wasn't consuming wood, it was consuming his old fear-based awareness, the old heart consciousness, as the source calls it. And standing in that internal blaze, he asks the ultimate existential question, a question that is, it's truly timeless.
It's the question every single one of us asks when we start to awaken, isn't it? What is the authority behind my voice? What is the source of this inner stirring that's pushing me to act? How do I speak from this divine mind and not from that small, shaky voice of fear and doubt?
In short, who am I really? What identity is sending me? He was still reaching for a label, an external anchor. He was hoping for a definitive name to shut down his critics and maybe his own internal critic.
But the answer he got did something so much more profound than just giving him a title.
Oh, absolutely. And here we get to the heart of it all, the revelation itself. Dr. Roy prefers the translation, I exist that I exist, over the more traditional I am that I am.
Okay, let's slow down here because that seems like a subtle shift, I am, to I exist. But you're saying it's crucial. Why?
It's a dramatic difference. Because in English, the phrase I am can still imply a specific status or a character or a role. It can be a definition. If I say, I am a teacher, that's a label. I exist just strips all of that away. All definition, all description. It is the statement of pure, eternal, undifferentiated being.
So if the answer is I exist, what assumptions about hierarchy and religion does that just immediately wipe off the table?
It eliminates the need for any intermediary, for any descriptive title. If the breath had said, I am the sovereign Lord, well, that would have established a very clear, defined hierarchy. But I exist, that I exist, is a statement of fundamental reality.
Right. It can't be captured by a title or a ritual or an image.
Which is precisely what the people needed to hear to move past the idolatry they'd learned in Egypt.
So it's not I am the boss or I'm the one who commands. It's simply I am being, and being is the only authority you will ever need.
That's it. The breath was breathing back into Moses' awareness the simple truth. I exist in you, and you exist in me. So the breath was revealing that existence is the sender, and being is the authority. The divine mind is the true source of his commission, and that mind is shared.
Which means the authority that sends Moses is completely internal. Nothing outside of him needs to authorize his movement.
Because the breath within him is moving through him. That's its nature, to exist and to express existence.
And to really anchor this, the breath adds that this existence, this life, this movement, this ever-present awareness is my essence, my character, my authority, and my presence forever.
This is how I am to be recognized in all generations. This wasn't a temporary password just for Pharaoh. This was the eternal description of the source's very nature. It's not a title you chant, it's a reality you realize.
The second Moses accepted that the authority sending him was the unchangeable fact of existence itself, he moved from being a reluctant messenger to being an expression of being. And that leads us to the universal application. Because if this is true, Moses isn't unique.
He's the pattern. He's the prototype. Dr. Roy sees Moses as the sacred self awakening from the old awareness, that critical shift from the limited, fear-based heart consciousness moving toward alignment with the divine mind. And this pattern is reproducible. It applies to every single individual that Scripture says was sent.
Okay, we need to spend some time on this because this is the blueprint, right? This is how the sacred self transitions from being externally dictated to internally released. Let's break down the 5 key steps that Dr. Roy outlines in this journey of being sent.
Absolutely. So, step 1 is the foundation. Inner awakening to breath. This is that first stirring. It's the feeling of internal pressure, the sense that the world you see on the outside doesn't quite line up with the truth you're feeling on the inside.
For Moses, it was the voice in the bush. For someone today, it might be, a sudden wave of compassion or a deep curiosity that just challenges their whole routine.
Exactly. The awakening isn't always a dramatic fire. It's simply the recognition that there is an internal source of movement, a ruach, that's different from the normal, everyday chatter of the mind.
It's recognizing I am more than my thoughts and my circumstances.
Yes. The consciousness turns toward the source. And this leads directly to step 2, realization of identity.
And this is where Moses' original question gets its real answer. If I'm awake now, who am I really?
The identity realization is accepting that I exist principle. It's moving past all the labels, shepherd, prince, father, whatever, and seeing yourself as an eternal expression of existence itself. When that happens, you stop trying to get authority and you start realizing you are the authority because you're inseparable from the source.
And that realization is the engine that drives the next step, which seems like the most crucial pivot point. Step 3, the shift from heart awareness to divine mind awareness.
This is the practical difference between living by human opinion and living by eternal truth. Heart awareness is all tied up with inherited beliefs, cultural rules, fear, ego, that sense of being separate. Divine mind awareness is alignment with the I exist principle, eternal, constant, fearless, and non-judgmental.
So that shift is what really releases you from those external systems.
Yeah.
It's not just about believing a new thing. It's about changing the operational center of your consciousness from fear to truth.
Precisely. And once that operational shift is complete, what happens to your sense of purpose? It moves from being a burdensome task to being an inevitable expression. That's step 4, inner prompting or unveiling of purpose.
You don't need an instruction manual anymore.
No. You realize your function is already built into your being. Moses didn't need to ask what to do next. Once he knew who he was, I exist, the action, go to Pharaoh, just flowed naturally from that state of awakened awareness. The purpose is revealed, not assigned.
And finally, step 5, that internal realization moves into the visible world, a movement outward to express what was awakened inwardly.
And that is the very definition of Shalach. The outward movement, the teaching, the speaking, the action, it's just the overflow of the inner truth. It is existence expressing existence. This pattern confirms that according to Dr. Roy, none of these historically sent people were commissioned by a distant God. They were all activated by the breath they found within.
Okay, I have to push back a bit here because for most people reading Scripture, the idea that Moses, Isaiah, and Jesus were all activated by the exact same internal blueprint and not given unique external tasks, that is a really radical departure. How does Dr. Roy justify grouping these massive figures under one single internal mechanism?
He justifies it by saying the principle of the divine mind is singular and universal. The external manifestations, the Red Sea, the prophecies, the miracles, they're just the contextual expressions of that one. Unified internal reality unfolding in different times and places.
So the cruxes of their missions weren't unique assignments.
No. They were unique expressions of the universal truth of I exist, delivered to different groups of people who were struggling with different forms of that old awareness.
That makes the need for Moses' revelation even clearer. He knew the language of religion, of rituals and symbols and fear. He needed this huge consciousness shift to understand that his job wasn't to be a delegate for Elohim, it was to be the visibility of the breath.
Yes. To awaken the sacred selves of those who had forgotten their own source. The ultimate realization is what changes everything. You do not go out for me, you go out as me. That is the essence of Shalach, to release what already is.
Okay, so now we have to test this unified pattern. Let's run it against the other major scriptural examples in the source material and see if this internal release model holds up.
Let's do it.
Let's start with Isaiah. He's often held up as the gold standard of heroic volunteerism. Isaiah 6:8. Here am I, send me.
Right. Traditionally, it's presented like a job interview in the divine throne room. A call goes out, who will go for us? Nobody answers, and Isaiah bravely raises his hand.
He volunteers for this difficult, painful mission. The whole emphasis is on external risk and obedience to an external assignment.
But the metaphysical reading, when you use the lens of Shalach and this 5-step pattern, it changes the entire scene. First, Isaiah has his inner awakening. Step 1. He sees the divine mind filling the temple of his consciousness.
He sees the seraphim.
These fiery, non-physical expressions of eternal awareness. He has this profound conscious realization of the source. And that famous woe is me moment, that's him realizing the impurity of his old heart awareness in the presence of I exist.
And so, here am I, send me, is what comes after that internal cleansing and realization.
It's the final step of the pattern. It is not volunteering for a job. It is an affirmation of complete alignment with the breath, with the divine mind. The phrase really means, my consciousness is now aligned with the breath. I am released. Let what has been awakened in me flow out into the world as the voice of awakened awareness.
So the breath didn't assign him a task.
No. The breath unveiled the expression that was already consecrated within him. The alignment is the commission.
That is such a subtle but profound difference. The traditional view focuses on the difficulty of the task, while the metaphysical view focuses on the state of consciousness that's required to even perform it.
And that clarity is even more vital when we look at Jeremiah, because his story is the one that seems to support predestination and external assignment more than any other.
Jeremiah 1:5. Before you were formed, I consecrated you and sent you. I mean, that verse is used all the time to argue that a deity assigns specific, unchangeable jobs to people before they're even born. If that's true, it would completely blow up the internal awakening model of Shalach.
And Dr. Roy tackles this head-on. He calls it one of the most persistent misinterpretations in all of religious teaching. The metaphysical lens interprets that statement not as a historical pre-birth mandate for a job, but as a statement about an eternal truth of being.
Okay, so how do the words consecrated and sent change when you look at them metaphysically?
The phrase, before you were formed, is interpreted to mean, before you formed opinions, before you inherited consequence thinking, before that old awareness veiled your eternal identity. It means that your being, your sacred self, was already a consecrated expression of the divine mind from the very beginning.
So the sending here isn't about commissioning a job. It's about confirming an eternal state of being.
That's it. This identity is what is released, Shalach into visibility during your life. Jeremiah wasn't handed a pre-written mission briefing. He was unveiled to his own eternal consecrated state. The prophecies and actions that came later were simply the inevitable outward movement, step 5, of the truth that had always existed within him.
The mission flows from the state of being, not from a temporal assignment.
Exactly.
Okay, so that establishes a pretty continuous philosophical thread through the Old Testament prophets. Now, we have to shift gears linguistically to the New Testament, to the Christ pattern. But first, we have to confirm that the metaphysical continuity holds up.
Right. So when Jesus said he was sent by the breath, the Greek word used is apostolo. The big question is, does this Greek root word contradict the Hebrew shalach?
Because if the metaphysical reading is going to be consistent, apostolo also has to imply an internal release, not an external journey.
And it absolutely reinforces it. Apostolic carries the exact same core meaning. To send forth from within, to release, to dispatch, and crucially, to bring something into visibility or expression.
So the language changes, but the underlying mechanism is identical. It's still inner source becoming outer expression.
Which means when Jesus says he was sent, he's not talking about being dispatched from some geographical heavenly city like a subordinate carrying a message for the king.
So what is he saying?
The source material is clear. Jesus was released into visibility as a consecrated messenger. He was embodying the divine mind, I exist, without any obstruction. He is the pattern of the fully awakened sacred self. So for him to say he was sent just means he was released into full visibility as I exist.
His life and his work were the outward flow of the eternal truth that he had fully realized within his own consciousness.
And the power of that realization, that release, is then immediately transferred to his followers. Just look at the apostles in John 20:21. As the breath sent me, I send you.
So this isn't a religious commissioning.
Dr. Roy calls it identity transferring to identity. Jesus is not saying, here, I'm giving you a badge of my authority. He's saying the same breath, the same principle of I exist that released me is now, in this moment, releasing you.
They aren't going out as his subordinates or delegates.
No, they're going out as co-expressions of I exist. They were revealed, not whooputized. Their authority wasn't derived from Jesus' title. It came from the same awakened consciousness that operated through him. Their job was to be awakeners.
To teach others that they, too, have this inner commission. And finally, John the Baptist. He's often seen as the last Old Testament prophet and the herald of the new. John 1:6 calls him a man sent from Elohim.
John is the perfect example of a sacred self whose purpose was completely aligned with unveiling the truth. He wasn't externally assigned a role. His entire function was to embody an awareness that pointed away from himself and toward the awakened identity that he saw in Jesus.
So, metaphysically, what defines John the Baptist's sending?
He's defined as a consciousness released from within the divine mind, a voice awakening others to their inner breath, a sacred self functioning as a herald of a fuller unveiling. His authority was just the clarity of his consciousness. To be sent in his context is to be the visible demonstration of awakened awareness.
It's amazing how cohesive this pattern is. Whether it's Moses, Isaiah, Jeremiah, or Jesus and John, the underlying mechanism, the shalach, is always an internal release and unveiling. It's never an external mandate.
It is. And that cohesion is what makes this next part, what Dr. Roy calls the disruptive truth, even more powerful. Because if this internal self-authorizing mechanism is the truth, it has massive, catastrophic implications for any system that's built on external hierarchy.
Which brings us to the big question. Why did traditional religion miss this for centuries? Why focus on I am that I am as a name instead of I exist that I exist as a principle?
Well, they missed it because institutional structure, just by its very nature, prefers external systems. It's how they maintain control. For thousands of years, religious and political institutions have favored things like external authority, a rigid hierarchical structure with priests and bishops, carnal assignments like building funds, and literal missions.
And fear-based obedience and a big emphasis on titles, positions, ritual.
All of it. All things that require external validation and authorization. If your authority comes from the breath within you, you don't need the institution to stamp your passport.
And that's the disruptive part. The revelation of I exist is the ultimate decentralized truth.
It is. If Moses was sent from within, then people do not need priests or institutions or external mediators to reach the divine mind. They don't need religion to authorize their voice. They just need awakening.
I understand the theory, but in practice, wouldn't Dr. Roy's interpretation just lead to chaos? If everyone's authority is internal, what stops anyone from claiming I exist sent me to justify any personal agenda or, some harmful dogma?
That's a crucial point, and it's exactly why external systems prefer control. But Dr. Roy clarifies that the authority of I exist is intrinsically linked to the character of the source that was revealed to Moses, unchanging, eternal, and expressed as compassion, life, movement, and awareness.
So true alignment with the divine mind would actually preclude any egoic, fear-based, or harmful action.
Exactly. The external manifestation of the fully realized I exist pattern, which we see in the Christ pattern, is universal love and awakening, not division and control. The proof is in the fruit, not the credentials.
The internal authority has to manifest as the eternal character of the source.
Precisely. And that is why Dr. Roy calls the revelation of I exist the most disruptive truth ever breathed into earthly consciousness. It irrevocably places the source of power and commission internally, within the sacred self, not in any external book or building or title.
Let's hammer home the outcome of that revelation to Moses one last time. When he was answered, I exist, what was the ultimate instruction that was embedded in that authorization?
It was a transformation of function. It meant, you do not go out for me, you go out as me. The job description shifted from being a delegate to being an expression. And that is the essence of Shalak, to release what already is, what is eternally present, and to demonstrate it openly.
And this establishes a continuous lineage, but not a lineage of ordination or bloodline. It's a lineage of consciousness.
Yes, the lineage of the sent ones. Dr. Roy extends this line through all the historical figures we've discussed, recognizing them not by their historical context or their miracles, but by their awakened consciousness. And he includes modern metaphysical teachers like Kay Fairchild and himself, and critically, all awakened sacred selves today.
This lineage is defined only by that internal awakening and the willingness to let the I exist principle flow outwardly.
It is the unifying, continuous flow of existence expressing itself through every era. And this is the moment where we connect the experience of Moses directly to you, the individual listening to this deep dive who feels that same inner stirring.
Because the breath still sends, it still releases, it still unveils in every generation. And when that inner stirring begins, the question of every sacred self who awakens is still Moses' question. Who shall I say sent me?
And the metaphysical answer, stripped of all the religious titles and external anchors, remains entirely, absolutely unchanged.
It's not a specific deity's name,
Yeah.
not a religious hierarchy, not an organizational title, and definitely not some external authority figure giving you permission.
The authority lies in the eternal, absolute fact of your own being. The breath of I exist sent you because it is you. Every awakened person is sent by those internal forces we outlined in the 5-step pattern.
Your credentials are that inner stirring of compassion, the illumination of the divine mind, and the empowerment of the breath within your own consciousness. Those are the only things you ever need to cite.
To be sent is simply to move outwardly, in alignment with the truth that has awakened inwardly. Existence expresses existence. Being reveals being. The source just reproduces itself through conscious awareness.
So let's end with the final, definitive metaphysical definition of what it means to be sent.
Metaphysically, sent never means assignment. It never means delegation. It means unveiled. It means released from within as a natural expression of the source. It implies the eternal breath manifesting through awakened awareness, and that manifestation is your purpose.
Which means that when you rise to teach, or to write, to speak, or just to express kindness and awakening in your daily life, you are not functioning from external instructions. You are functioning as that which is always sending itself, existence expressing existence.
This profound inner conversation where the awakened self speaks, conscious awareness listens, the divine mind illuminates, and the breath empowers the outward expression. That is the entire substance of commission and authority.
We've taken one pivotal question from a foundational moment in religious history, and using Dr. Roy E. Richmond's insights, we've shifted the entire understanding of identity and mission. We've moved authority from the external world of mandates and priests to the internal consciousness of the sacred self.
Confirming that the commission isn't something you receive, it's something you realize you already have, and then you just release it. The journey from seeking a password to realizing your own eternal existence is the ultimate deep dive.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to mull over. If the deepest, most authentic expression of your life's purpose is simply the releasing of what you already are, existence manifesting existence, what specific fear or external requirement are you now ready to shed, knowing that your commission originates only from within?
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.